albums.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is a category Mark suggested, and
Yes, he did.
I think it's a good one.
I do too.
So, Mark, why don't you lead it off with a comeback album?
Gonna lead it off with the band that has my favorite guitar player. Well, one of mine. Deep Purple, Perfect Strangers. That was a comeback.
Yes, it
They
was.
were actually, after Richie Blackmore left, they kind of went into the wilderness. They had Tommy Bolin. Then they broke up. That was a comeback. And it was a damn good album. But
Wow.
I'm going to
It's a
say,
good album. Yeah.
I hate the sound of it. And I think because they recorded it in a ski lodge in Vermont, it's, if you listen on headphones, it's got a lot of distortion, not good distortion. So I think they were just pushing the levels, but
So it was still Deep Purple Phase 2 minus
Mark
Richie
II.
Blackmore.
No.
The original lineup.
Yep. So
Minus
they got
Richie
the Mark
Blackmore.
II. Yep.
No, it's the original lineup.
No, the original had
The original
Rod
lineup
Evans
had
on
the other guy, Susang Hush, Rod.
Oh no, this
Yeah,
is it's the classic lineup.
Yeah.
This was the
With Ian Gillan.
second phase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was huge because I was in 8th grade, and I remember WNEW and WPLJ carried the press conference, and I'm listening, and they're like, you don't hear that anymore on the radio. Like, bands reuniting, let's play the press conference, and huge tour. So I'm in my freshman year, but that really got him. That was huge.
Yeah, I had that on cassette. I mean, I thought it sounded pretty good because what I liked about it, the sound was kind of dry, but the drums sounded real because that was at a point.
Yes.
What year did that come out? 84 maybe.
83, I believe.
83. I didn't
Or
like
84.
that. Okay, there's some of those bigger overprocessed snare drum sounds. I was like Def Leppard, for instance.
Yeah.
That snare drum sound. I mean, the records are kind of slick, but it just doesn't sound like a drum to me. It sounds like a combination of white noise from a sample combined with the snare drum. But Ian Pace's kit sounded like a drum kit, and I thought the songs were really solid.
And I'll tell you, on the tour, I remember distinctly remembering that Ian Pace's drums in concert sounded just like the album. He has a great drum sound.
Yeah.
Great
You
drummer.
got a comeback album, Lou?
I do. George Harrison's Cloud 9, 1987.
Great album.
It's a great album.
That was
The
a
album
comeback
cuts-
record, right?
It was definitely a big comeback, and the reason also because after All Things Must Pass, most of the records except for Paul and Ringo, Paul and Ringo had the best reviewed records, I think. Ringo didn't have many clunker albums that were considered really bad. Maybe, and Ringo had a standard. He wasn't. No
Ringo
slouch,
had more
obviously.
number one hits than any of them, I think.
Probably did he more than John.
Post
I think
Beatle,
maybe,
yeah.
Well, yeah, maybe next to Paul, but even still, John gave him hell for having him hit singles, in a funny way.
Well,
but like George had some singles, some beautiful singles all along the way through the 70s, but the albums were pretty much panned.
Yeah.
Cracker Box Palace is a great song. I love that song. That's on, I think, Gone Troppo, and it was just George at it.
that was a single. Then he threw it on an album later on, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was just something where he didn't have great old albums worth of great material, but there was beautiful songs. Anyway, but this song there was hits on it. I Got My Mind Set on You, which is a cover. I heard the original. George did it better.
That's an old one. Joy, he did a great version of it. Yep.
Yeah, and that is not a drum machine, but it's not a drummer, but that's a drum machine programmed by Jim Keltner. It almost sounds real.
Wow.
Yeah. I read an interview. He said, I tried to drag it. I tried to, as much as you can drag a drum machine. While anyone could do it, he could.
While we're there, I have to say, Double Fantasy, John and Yoko, first record in 5 years.
Sure.
That was a comeback.
Yeah.
Right.
And
absolutely.
Another album that had some hits on it.
First record in maybe more than 5 years. I don't know when he recorded it again. 74 might have been his last record.
Yeah, he retired in 75, and but he probably started recording that in 79. So, but that's 5 years between releases.
But that was a comeback. Double Fantasy, John and Yoko, without a doubt.
Right. I want to hear the Cheap Trick mixes.
They're good.
Supposedly Cheap Trick.
On the box set. On the box set, you can.
Really?
With the Cloud 9 record, it was a Jeff Lynne at his pinnacle production, worked with Petty and the Wilburys, and that led to the Wilburys.
Can I just say something about Cloud 9 just real quick? That was when I first started buying CDs. CDs came out. And I remember bringing home, and what I like about George is his slide playing. And that album had the perfect balance of great compositions, and his slide playing was just so good, eerie, and the sound. I got tired of Jeff Lynne's production after a while, but that album sounds great. It really
does.
Good.
The song "When We Was Fab," it's not novelty. It's just George sounding like a Beatle. That's a Beatles song with Ringo.
Yeah.
But Double Fantasy, that was the kind of album like when it came out. George Martin said, he goes, it's not vintage Lennon, but it's good. But, but the critics weren't all that kind to it when it first came out. But then after John died, you heard everything. And
we're not going through this for criticism purposes. We're just going through it because it was a comeback album.
That album,
you got to have some background.
That album had some of my favorite John Lennon songs. I've heard fans say, "Oh, that was his pop album." Give it up. Of course it's a pop album, and it's a great pop album.
Yeah.
Watching the wheels go round and around is I love that song.
I even said, he used to make fun of Paul with the Paul Sappy love songs, and he had some sappy songs on there.
Was Beautiful
Boy, and
it's a great song.
It's a great song.
Sure it is. Yeah,
beautiful song.
Who else has a comeback record?
Oh, Mark,
I got one. Yes, 90125. Love it or hate it. How many 70s progressive groups were able to make it into the 80s? Not many. Right. You could say
was
two.
Was that the first record with that guy Trevor Rabin?
No. Yeah. I thought you were going to say John Anderson.
But they made a comeback, but they made it sound fresh. They weren't rehashing.
It sounded new. It sounded 80s. Yeah. Yep.
Everyone
they utilized all the tricks.
Yep. Everyone thought they were washed up because they did that album with Trevor Horn singing and Jeff Downes on keyboards drama, which I liked, but hey, John Anderson's out, and they got him back. But the story behind it is John Anderson kind of pushed his way into it. They were going to do it now with just Trevor, and Trevor was going to do most of the singing. And John Anderson, he always found a way to get himself back in the band. He did that multiple times, But
why should
did it help sell those records?
John Anderson.
Hell yeah.
Right?
Hell yeah.
Well, that was also a smart move because who's Trevor Rabin? No one knew who he was at that point.
Exactly.
Right. And who's the voice?
He's a good singer. Yeah, he's a good singer, but he's not John Anderson.
Trevor Rabin supplied the great songs on that album. The guy he had been putting out solo albums since '75. The guy he was supposed to be in a band with Keith Emerson, and he chose to go with the Yes Guys. So they were going to be called Cinema. That was the story, but they just made it Yes, and So if it wasn't for him writing those songs, they wouldn't have had those hits. If it wasn't for John Anderson, they wouldn't have been Yes. So,
and it showed Alan White, a very versatile drummer, because there's a lot of pop drumming, rock drumming, but it's still got that progressive touch to it.
Yep.
So he's much more subtle than Bill Bruford. I'll say that.
Absolutely, he was He was. I always said I used to be a Bill Bruford guy, and then I get no. Alan White's solid, and they're right. He's solid. He learned the catalog in one weekend before he joined them. I mean,
unbelievable. Yeah. And all the session work too.
And that song, that lead, that big hit single, didn't that have some really tight snare drum?
It did,
right? Really, really tight.
The whole snare drum is almost like a piccolo snare. And there was remember they had orchestra hits. Boom,
yes,
that was they made those things they made their way into dance hits.
And what year was that?
83 or 4.
83.
It was MTV, so
or maybe even 82.
In the early 80s.
Mark, I looked it up. It's 83. I thought it was 85. 83. I thought it was later.
Yeah.
So that's really early in the 80s.
Yeah.
What have you got, Lou, for a comeback record?
AC/DC, Back in Black.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Who would have thought? Yeah.
Now, is this the first one with Bruce?
What's his name? Brian Johnson.
Brian Johnson
for AC/DC.
That's the first record with him. So it's a comeback in the sense that it's the first record since Bon Scott died.
Yeah, they lost their singer, and not only did they come back, they had one of the biggest albums ever in rock and roll, which is just amazing.
It's like the third best-selling album in history.
Yeah. That's a great comeback.
And I think it was something where, it's one thing to come back. It's something to come back bigger. That's rare.
Yeah.
That must never happen.
Yeah. Good point.
And I've made my peace with that album. I spent years hating it because I was tired of it. I played it the other day, and a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, it's a great album. I got the feeling when I was young, when it first came out. I was like 11 years old when it came out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I get it. It's a great album to crank. The production is really good on it.
Right. It's that's my first exposure to AC/DC. And then when I heard Dirty Deeds, I'm like, that's not the same guy. I didn't know the history of them.
Yeah. Neither did I.
Yeah, I thought his voice was cartoon. I thought both their voices are kind of cartoonish in that weird kind of way.
Yeah.
But Bon Scott's I thought was just almost too peculiar, but I got used to it though. But I thought Brian Johnson with that material, he was perfect.
Well, the thing about the guitar player Angus Young,
Angus Beef,
he put no effects on his guitar. The guy just rocks.
Yeah,
he doesn't stomp on pedals or anything. He just rocks.
And
if he needs a volume boost, he turns it up. Yeah.
And people call them a heavy metal band. They're a rock and roll band.
Yeah,
Rock and roll.
those categories are so loose.
Just like in the 70s.
Yeah.
Bon Jovi's a rock and roll in the rock and roll category.
Yeah.
Fucking
Yeah.
Bon Jovi. You
Yeah,
know?
Kiss
it's
were
not
Kiss,
necessarily hard rock.
Kiss were a rock and roll band in the 70s. They were just a rock and roll band and put makeup on.
Yeah.
You know?
You could have called them hard rock, you know.
Yeah,
I mean, but,
yeah.
I mean,
Right,
then
right.
you do a ballad. Are you a hard rock band when you do a ballad, or
Right, yeah.
especially when you guys got a formula here? Let's do more ballads.
I think Malcolm Young, or one of them said, we kind of do Chuck Berry on steroids. That's really what they were, you know?
I've got one. I've got a comeback album, 1985. John Fogerty, Center Field.
Yeah.
That was a big comeback for him.
Big. It was big.
Free of the lawsuits finally, and whatever, and I made a record, right?
Yeah.
But then they had a song on there where they sued him again or something, right?
The Old Man Down the Road.
The Old Man Down the Road.
What year is that? You said 80. You said 85.
85 was Center Field, yeah.
So, what was the last time you put out a record prior to that? Was it a Creedence record?
He was on Asylum. He was on Asylum for a record.
Okay.
Maybe a couple of years before that, when he was on Asylum, his records weren't really well received, so this was a big comeback for him. But he wrote From Small Things, Mama, Big Things, One Day Come. Dave Edmunds had a hit with that.
Bruce Springsteen wrote that.
I'm sorry. I'm thinking Almost Saturday Night Outside.
Right.
John Fogerty wrote that song.
Yes, yeah.
Recorded it on one of his Asylum albums, I believe. And Dave Edmunds had a hit with that, and a few other people recorded that as well.
Right.
And then had another one.
I love Dave Edmunds' version of that.
So do I. Dave Edmunds had a great pop hit with that, yeah. But Center Field was a big comeback album for John Fogerty, 1985. Anyone else?
I got one. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to go with Black Sabbath, Heaven and Hell. They lost Ozzy or they fired him.
Mm-hmm.
They were putting out kind of crap music. They were both washed up, both camps. And then they hired the services of Ronnie James Dio, and shame it didn't last. That's my, all right, so I'm going to get shot for saying this. Personally, I'm a Dio Sabbath guy. That's just me.
Really? Wow.
But it kind of like AC/DC in that they were seriously washed up, and not only did they get a new singer, but the music was so much better than the last couple albums with Ozzy. They were on a fire.
Yeah, and I guess Ozzy used to triple track his vocals too. Because,
yeah. His voice is pretty. Ozzy's voice is always kind of thin.
Yeah, it's good. I like it.
It's iconic. It's definitely, if it's distinctive, it'll catch you. You know.
You know what it is?
Ronnie James Dio is probably like David Lee, like Sammy Hagar was a really technically better singer.
Yeah,
he can sing. He can sing. Sammy Hagar.
Yeah, Ronnie James Dio is technically a better singer.
Guy could sing. Yeah.
Ozzy's voice is, hey, if you really try, you can be a singer. You know, it's like he was never a singer, but he did it. God bless him. He knew. I'm
glad you mentioned that, Lou. There's somebody we could have thrown in as opening act, Montrose.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah,
they could have been. They were one of those opening acts. Yeah.
Yep. Sammy got lucky. You know,
the guy could sing though, man. Yeah.
No, he definitely had a powerful voice and a range. And, he's a rock and roll guy.
Didn't Sammy Hagar write "Bad Motor Scooter"? Was that? Did he write that song?
Yeah.
I can't count to 55.
Yeah.
But there's only one way to rock.
Oh no!
Your
and then
love is driving me crazy.
Yes, and
that was a big hit.
The one that Rick Springfield did.
Three Lock Box.
No, Rick Springfield. Dun, dun, dun,
good buddy of mine.
Dun, dun. Oh man, I can't think of it, but yeah, he put out some great pop tunes. Sammy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Rick Springfield, good buddy of mine.
Sammy.
He had a big hit with Sammy Hagar song on Working Class Dog. Jeez, I can't remember it.
I know what you're talking about.
Because Sammy was a good songwriter.
Yeah, I saw one of those Sammy Hagar road shows, and he hooked up with Ricky Springfield, and they played that song. Yeah,
cool.
Yeah,
good autobiography. The guy, he came from nowhere, literally nowhere. So good on him.
All right, who's got another comeback album?
I got one.
Okay.
It's weird because I couldn't. It's considered a comeback, but this artist is too important and too brilliant to be a comeback. It was Bob Dylan's "Oh Mercy."
Yes.
it was considered a serious return to something. But I didn't know he was all that lost in that part.
Because
of
the
80s.
critics, he was getting railed by the critics.
Yeah,
so when
yeah.
he did that work with Daniel Lanois, you're right.
And then
That was considered a comeback because it was well received. Yeah.
But it's a brilliant album. We reviewed it here. I mean, he knocked it out of the park with that. The writing, everything, the stories behind that record are just so interesting. You know. So,
Yeah.
I mean, thinking it's insulting, really, to think like Dylan made a comeback. You know, I wouldn't even. You know, like I said, his worst record is something someone else will never achieve. You know? So, But by his standard and legend, I guess people say that about the Rising as well. They said that was Bruce's comeback record because he hadn't made a record with the E Street Band in years. He did the two solo records, which we like. I mean, I think we like those records. I know I do.
I do.
But they were considered not Bruce, you know. So him doing the Rising with the E Street Band was considered a comeback.
Was his first album in 7 years with the E Street Band.
7.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's
it's a good record.
That's a comeback. Yeah.
Yeah.
A big comeback too.
I think that was the beginning of his association with
And
Brendan
by
O'Brien.
the way, when we were a couple of weeks ago, we were doing the things. Do you think the phone company Verizon ever wanted that song? Come on up to Verizon.
They
they pitched it. You know they pitched it.
Na 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 na.
You know they pitched it to him.
Yeah. And if he was starving, he would have done it.
All right.
What else?
I got Paul Simon, Graceland.
That was a comeback? Really?
Yeah, because his previous few albums kind of bombed. Look, Paul Simon was always popular among people that really liked music. He wasn't popular. He really wasn't that popular. The album that came out before it, and I can't remember the name of it, he's on the cover with like he's in like a restaurant. He's like somewhere in the city. That album, I loved it, but it bombed. It just didn't go anywhere. So yeah, Graceland came. That was first time he had a hit since the 70s, I think.
Wow.
You know,
okay.
And prior to Graceland coming out, I told you guys I was in a bar in Greenwich Village, and I went to go pee in the bathroom. I lifted up the seat. There's a laminated picture of Paul Simon.
Did tell us
it says "Piss on Paul Simon." So I mean, I did. I think.
And he took a hairway to Stephen.
As long as we're doing redux, that was from the old. That was from the old show. All right, come on.
No, that was on.
Anyway, I mentioned every time I
where were we?
I don't know.
Don't call it a comeback.
All right, I've got a comeback record. I've got a comeback record.
Yeah.
It's apparently I hate this fucking guy. Axel von Douchebag. Chinese Democracy by Guns N' Roses. It's a comeback album.
Really?
It's a comeback, but it's debatable. Every fan of Guns N' Roses were like,
right, but it's a comeback album.
You're right.
It's a comeback album, technically.
Is there anything on that we might know?
Well, he had a song. It's funny when they were on MTV Video Music Awards, and that was the big comeback, right, of Guns N' Roses. They were back. Of course, they had Buckethead on guitar. You know, they had a whole new band.
Really?
And they did one new song, and then like 4 years went by, I didn't hear anything. It's a tortured story getting that album out. And then it came out, I think, exclusively through Best Buy first. It was like one of those exclusives. But you're right, Perry. I was almost going to say no, but you know what? Yeah, it's a comeback album.
It's Axel von Douchebag, so.
Oh, my God. Who the hell cares?
I can't stand him.
No one.
I never could. I mean, I was like, I wanted to like Guns N' Roses, you know, the first records more than I did because I thought they were a good rock and roll band.
They were.
Slash is not a guitar guy. It's solid rock and roll. That's what they were. And they were shit after Izzy Stradlin.
In fact, last week Mark and I were talking, and he said like if Slash ever said he was the greatest guitar player, he would slap the top hat off of his head, you know, for saying that.
Well, he probably wouldn't do that.
My story of Guns N' Roses, when that album came out, it was a slow, that Appetite for Destruction. It bombed when it came out. It wasn't big, but I had a friend in high school and we listened. And I'm like, yeah, they reminded me of Aerosmith. They were good. I liked the album. Then they had they had Welcome to the Jungle really hit. And then the big next song was Paradise City. They opened for Aerosmith. Aerosmith was playing Giant Stadium, that big comeback tour, Permanent Vacation. It was the final show of the tour. We go. It was a triple bill. It was Aerosmith, Deep Purple, Guns N' Roses. Now, I went for Deep Purple. So Guns N' Roses, the new guys on the block, right? They're the opening band. They come out. They had an attitude right away. He said some stuff that pissed off. I think he said something about Deep Purple, like if you just go home, don't worry about doing it. People started giving Axl the finger.
Oh, there's a
And
shot.
I got
Yeah,
so
yeah.
mad at him. And he started telling people to rip up the seats. He's telling people tear the food concessions apart. He was like trying to start a riot, just like Fred, what's his name from that other band. So
Flintstone?
B-52s.
Oh no, Fred, the guy that did the I forget.
Rip up your seats now.
So I got close to the stage, and I took satisfaction that when he was seeing everyone giving them the finger, and I know he saw me. He pissed me off. You're the opening band. Don't be trying to take over. On the other hand, they did film, if you watch the Paradise City video, the first half of the song is filmed at the Reading Festival in England. Then when it goes to the fast part of the song, they filmed that at the show we saw. But they edit it very slickly. You don't see people giving them the fingers, but it's Giant Stadium.
Axl strikes me as the kind of person who would just give you the finger back, so fuck him.
He was getting a rise out of us. He was doing an Iggy, maybe, But he pissed people off, and he was like, just when you're the opening band, like, hey, I'm playing Giant Stadium. Aerosmith invited us, Then like the place got destroyed. Deep Purple came out. Richie Blackmore was drunk. They did a half-hearted set, but Aerosmith came out, and I fell asleep during Joey Kramer's drum solo. That was
wow.
but
picture him. It's like that video where there's Perry's at that Nickelback concert, and he's giving that Freddie Kroeger guy the finger, and the guy gives Perry the finger back. You've seen that on YouTube.
No, I haven't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, who was at the concert when he got rained on firecrackers? Was that you, Perry, when you saw Kiss?
No, I saw Kiss at the Capitol Theater.
Didn't when you guys go to a show and apparently you were underneath the balcony and like somebody was like hurling firecrackers down on?
Oh, that was that. I had a Steve Miller show in Nassau Coliseum. Yeah, they were throwing M80s from the upper deck.
Oh, that scares the shit out of me. I was at a David Lee Roth concert and they were doing that. We were on the floor. All of a sudden, boom, boom. It never scared me so much.
Well, Steve Miller threatened to walk off the stage, and
yeah,
if they didn't stop, but they stopped. Yeah. So who's got another comeback record?
I was
going to mention Permanent Vacation, but that came up. So.
Well, not really. I didn't even think of it. It came out.
I've never been a big Aerosmith fan, but I do know when they came back from that, that was the aftermath of their first breakup, the Joe Perry Project stuff, and all that other disillusion.
Yeah. Yep.
But they use Outside Riders and all that stuff. But name me the songs on that. Was that Dude Looks Like a Lady? Is that on that one?
Yeah, Lovin' in the Elevator. Was that on there?
Love on the Escalator?
Angel.
Yeah, they lost their songwriting edge though. They were writing with like Desmond Child and Holly Knight and people like that. Yeah. Yep.
And only like 4 years previous, they put out an album with two other guitar players because Brad and Joe were out of the band, and they had Rick Dufay and I can't remember the name of the other guy, but it's called Rockin' a Hard Place. It's actually one of my favorite Aerosmith albums because it's really heavy. You remember that, Luke?
That's when Joe. I remember that song, but that's when Joe Perry. That's when they split.
Yeah, so that could have been their bottom.
Let the music do the talking.
Yeah, so that was like their bottom, even though it wasn't a bad album. And then they get the band back together, and look, you know what? They got the band back together. They did put an album out before Permanent Vacation. It didn't go anywhere. It was let the music do the talking.
But I think it's more like they got signed. I don't know what company signed them.
Geffen
gave them $80 million, and that's why they said, you know what, we're bringing in songwriters because we need hits.
Right. I also think if Bruce Fairbairn produced that, he brought in those songwriters. You know,
Bon Jovi,
there was a meeting with Geffen and everyone else.
You better believe it. We're not giving you an advance like that. We're bringing in hit makers. Yeah.
Since you're all former junkies,
and it worked. And it worked.
Yeah, because don't forget when Geffen signed them.
Yeah.
They're well done songs. Yeah.
Yeah, when Geffen signed them, they did Done with Mirrors, and it sounded like a 70s Aerosmith album. Came out in like 84. Didn't go anywhere. So Geffen read them the riot act, like, you guys get back in the studio, make me some money, And
we're bringing in Holly Knight, and we're bringing in Desmond Child.
Yeah,
yep.
Say what you want about David Geffen, he's very savvy but he understood his artists. You can't, like Lou Adler, all these other guys. You can't do this without having an ear for music.
Well, here
or an artistic lean.
Yeah,
I'm glad you went in that direction.
Your ruthlessness aside,
I'm glad you went in this direction because I have a comeback album. It was Clive Davis's idea to bring in that guy to sing with Carlos Santana on Supernatural. That was a big comeback for Carlos Santana.
Absolutely.
And it was Clive's idea.
Yeah. His albums were not selling at all. His albums were bombing. Yeah.
But there were quite a few hits from that.
There were a couple of hits from there. Yep. And
Michelle Branch.
That was a comeback
that's a
for
good song.
Carlos Santana. The record was called Supernatural, 1999, I believe.
Yeah, 99.
Was it? Yeah.
Yep. Because you're so smooth.
Yeah.
It's so
Cool.
smooth.
Any more?
I got
this,
one.
Little bit of that.
Allman Brothers, 7 Turns.
What?
That was
What?
a big album.
Who the? What
Remember
the-
that in the late 80s or early 90s? That was
I
the
do
album
not.
that paired them. Yeah, that was a big album. They were back. And that started the second phase of their career. And then from there on, they just toured till the
Didn't they have
Greg
like
Allman
6
died.
drummers or something?
Nah,
Yeah,
2.
it's just
Standard.
all at
They only
once
had
on
2.
stage.
They're so lame. But that was the original band, but with
They did 2 drummers good. They did it
yeah.
right.
They had the original band.
They were
and
the first. They were the first to do that, weren't they?
Yeah.
Maybe.
No.
The Grateful Dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, of
Yeah.
course.
Don't start Perry on the Dead.
Of course.
Because one drummer plays the rhythm, the other drummer jams over it.
Yeah.
Well, no,
Okay.
what I liked about the Allmans, if you listen to like the Fillmore album, they're hitting the snare at the same time. They're not trying to be fancy, but it sounded good.
Yeah, but in the realm of that backbeat, there's thing. Yeah, they were brilliant. Now, what year did I'm No Angel come out?
That was before 7 Turns. That was like the year before, and Greg Allman had a huge hit with that. That was him solo.
Do we know the year? 81?
No, way after that.
I don't think so.
No, it couldn't be that early.
I'm going to say 81. I'm No Angel, 81.
Well,
The reason I say that.
have we got
What was that?
I don't know.
We got
That's
dinged.
me.
Somebody got an
know.
email.
That was Mark. Someone's
All right,
got
I'm No Angel, song by Greg Allman, 1987.
87?
Yeah.
87.
Yep.
Did the older brother? Okay. I'm thinking of
Crashed
something
and
else.
burned on that one.
I really did. I thought they had. I was working a service merchandise in Paramus in '81, and there was an older brother, Crazy Mama. No, Crazy Mama, I love you. I don't know. I didn't like it.
That was
Sounded like-
service
it-
merchandise, man. Wow. I remember
Yeah.
that.
Want to hear a quick funny story?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what service merchandise was, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was a department store where you went in with a pad and paper and you wrote down what you wanted. You gave it to the counter. They took it back to the warehouse. We pulled the order and sent it on a conveyor belt.
Yeah.
So that's what it was. So one day I was my turn to watch the computer, and the assistant store manager, we didn't know, but he left the keys to the side doors on rang. So as I'm looking at the monitor, I see these people carrying television sets, stereos, everything you could lift out of the building. They cleaned the friggin' place out. And like, Lou, you're not going to take anything? I said, no, I'm not. Inventory, I wouldn't do it anyway, but inventory was a week away. I said, you think you're going to get away with this? Anyway, end of the year, all this shit came down, blah, blah, blah. I ended up getting laid off for some reason. 2 years later, I'm working in a bank, and some guy comes in at work. He goes, Lou, your legs aren't broken. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, one of the guys that worked there, his uncle was a gangster, and they thought I ratted them out. They all got caught. But what it was is one of the kids was going into the Marine Corps, and he cracked like an egg. He ratted everybody out. So anyway, my legs are intact.
See, if he had joined the French Foreign Legion, he wouldn't have to say anything.
The French Foreign Legion. Like Abbott and Costello.
Who's gotten more comeback
ran out.
records?
I ran out of
What
comeback
is
records.
is
I got
Van
one. I
Halen
got one. I fell off the cuff.
5150 Van Halen? Is that
I got off
considered
the
a
cuff.
comeback album?
No, it's
No,
a
they were
continuation.
really. Yeah. I got actually 2 more, but you go, Lou.
Only because it was just I'm a Levon Helm dirt farmer. I call that a comeback record.
Okay.
What was he doing? He was gone. He came
He had
back
a video
from throat,
for it and everything.
He came back
Yeah,
from throat
yeah.
cancer,
Yeah,
and he
yeah.
came back and won a Grammy.
Yeah.
And created a category.
Right.
Comeback.
Yeah.
By the way, just say 7 Turns. The reason to me it was a comeback is it's when they started with Warren Haynes. He was with them up to a point, and then he left. Warren Haynes is a great guitar player and great
Nashville
musician.
native.
Yeah. Is he?
Yeah. Oh yeah. He's from here.
Did not know that.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
That's what he does. The Christmas Jam every year at the Civic Center. It's the Nashville Christmas Jam. So it's all well-known acts come, and then they do like maybe 2 nights of shows.
Nice.
I've never been to one.
Is that at the guitar bar? Oh.
No, it's at the guitar bar. That'd be hysterical. Just rip their walls off the place and then put some cameras up. Yeah. It's been a while.
Well, let me tell you so. I got two.
Okay.
All right. One, you may not like it. I liked it. Green Day, American Idiot. That was a comeback for them because the last couple albums, I written them off. I thought they broke up. Nowhere.
A big comeback. Yeah.
Scott McClain doesn't like Green Day. He doesn't want. He would not want to hear that. But
I don't think they're a pop band. I mean, a punk band. I call them. They're a good pop band. That was a good pop record. You know
what they remind me of? Remember those bands in the 90s, like Lit? They were from the San Diego area, and they all had a unique. It was a punky, a hard pop sound.
Yeah,
and that's what Green Day were, hard pop.
Yeah, and they have a really good drummer. The guy's a good drummer.
Yeah.
Oh, Green Day?
Yeah. Trey Cool or whatever his name is. Frank Lloyd Wright, I think is his real name.
He's friends with Ringo.
Is he?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Cool.
I'll tell you right now,
cool.
to this day, I can listen to American Idiot. I can listen to it all the way through. It flows. It was a very good album. You know?
It was a well-written, well-done album, whatever you think of it. It was definitely something. It's their masterpiece.
Yeah.
You know, really, when you think about it.
They lifted like they are the Ramones.
They'd like to be, but
yeah.
And the Ramones were a pop band in a lot of ways too.
Absolutely, they were just a pop band.
Yeah. Punk is a very overused label. Anyone that came out in the late 70s that wore leather and was basic were called punk.
Yeah.
I never considered the Jam to be punk. You know, I don't even
know.
Aside from the first album, maybe Clash.
The Jam were mod. The Jam were mod. Yeah, they were.
But they get lumped in.
Wasn't Paul? Who sent me the Paul Weller DVD?
I'm guilty, sir.
It was you.
Yeah.
I had a
Who
feeling it
did
was
you think it would be,
nut.
Lou? Come on.
Well, he said no. He said he didn't do it.
So remember I told you on the show last week. I told you last week on the show, I said how all those songs sound so much better in concert, and he had a great DVD. So I go on Amazon. Some Goodwill store was selling it for $5. I hope it works, but
it looks unscratched. But I'm going to give it. Richard Thompson was great. But thank you.
There's two things on that. There's the concert in Hyde Park, which is fantastic, but the editing will give you a headache. It's fast editing. Then there's an acoustic show he did.
Right.
And it's nice to see him. And Noel Gallagher comes out and does a song with him. Or whatever.
Cool. Okay.
It's good. You know, it's just to hear him live. It's really good. He's just great live.
Look forward to it, man. Yeah, thank you.
I got one more album.
Another comeback album.
Wow,
and if Terry, if you heard this album, I'm going to mail you my Strat. You got to be truthful if you've heard it.
I have it.
Iron Maiden, Brave New World. Saying that because Bruce Dickinson had quit. They did 2 albums, which sold about maybe 50 copies. Iron Maiden were so low for a while. They were playing the Chance in Poughkeepsie. They were doing bars and small clubs. They got Bruce Dickinson back, put out this album. It was a good album, and back in the arenas. And that tour, they played the Meadowlands Arena. They played, every arena. And it just took Bruce Dickinson to come back in the band. They put him back on the map, and it was also a damn good album.
Was he off producing Blue Oyster Cult at that time?
No, they did have Albert Bouchard on one cut, on that album.
Bruce Dickinson.
I've got another one. I've got one or two more, and that's it.
Cool.
Apparently, Californication by the Red Hot Chili Peppers was a comeback record.
Really?
They had not made a record in a few years, and they lost a good. This is maybe the first record after what's his name left, the guy who used to be in Jane's Addiction.
Vaclav? No, that was the
Dave Navarro.
Dave Navarro.
So this was their comeback after Dave Navarro left the band. Yeah.
And the album with Dave Navarro, depending who you talk to, was considered a horrible failure. Although it had a couple hits on it, but some people didn't like it.
He's an overrated guitar player.
So is Under the Bridge with is Under the Bridge with John Frusciante?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Blood Sugar Sex Magic. Yeah, they're big hit.
Yep.
I always liked their version of Higher Ground off of Mother's Milk.
I like it.
And apparently Johnny Cash, American Recordings, is a huge comeback.
Good point.
The one with Rick Rubin, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when was the last time Johnny Cash put a record out before that, right?
And he was exposed
1994, maybe.
Yeah, and he was exposed to a whole new generation with that album.
Yeah, he did.
Yes, he was. That's true.
He did a 9 Inch Nails number. He was doing covers of these songs. Well, Johnny was always cool, man. The Man in Black, right? Yeah.
The day I took a road trip to Maine, I took a trip by myself. I put on the radio that morning, like Johnny Cash passed away.
Yeah. Johnny Cash.
Yeah.
That's great.
And I have one other one.
He's Mount Rushmore. He's
apparently,
Mount Rushmore worthy.
"Lick It Up" by Kiss was a comeback. They were getting terrible reviews on their records prior to that.
Really?
And so they took the makeup off for "Lick It Up," and apparently it was a pretty successful comeback record. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
But again, I ask, lick what up? What's being licked up?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Liquid makeup, maybe. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know.
Perry.
I don't know. No.
What's that album that Bob Dylan put out with Mississippi?
With the song Mississippi on it?
Yeah, Love, Theft.
Love and Theft?
Love and
Love
Theft.
and
That
Theft.
was like almost a second comeback in a way because he kind of like was like that album was huge. Like it was that year it came out. Every critic, every record, radio station, it was top. It's almost like he had two comebacks.
Well, but artists who have been around for that long, they're always going to have these waves where they're back, they're up, they're down, they're up, they're down. You know,
Right.
it's just the way it is.
Yeah.
But Bob Dylan is Bob Dylan, man. You know.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
He wasn't written off, but he just returned the form.
Yeah.
Much needed.
And he's kind of like it right now. He's kind of in that phase right now. His last album was great, but he really got to be a fan to like it, you know.
Yeah.
But he goes back to like songs from the he goes into styles that, he's almost like a Leon Redbone.
Yeah.
And that
it's good. I heard something recently. It's really good. His song, A Murder Most Foul, is genius.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's
he's
the last album.
He's still the wordsmith. Yeah.
Yeah. So whatever his voice is, in fact, I think the more I hear him as an older singer, the more he's adapted to that style. That's because he, like you said, he can't do what he did. He can't sing "Baby, Let Me Follow You Home" like he did the last waltz anymore. But you adapt. He'll interpret.
Yep.
That's the brilliance of.
Yeah.
So are we through with this category of comebacks, or do you guys have more?
I'm done.
Me too.